Okay, thank you all for joining. I would like to start um, by trying to give an outline of all the main things that come to my mind when it comes to Pesach Prep, and then you can tell me um, if there are other questions you want me to focus on. Um, a few, a few, um, a few initial things. Um, First of all, people, I know a few people are concerned with Tevilas Kalim going to the mikveh this year. So um, I want to say that the Teaneck mikveh is really doing an amazing job. One day they'll be thanked for it in terms of keeping the mikveh as clean as possible. So in the Kalim mikveh, it's cleaned and sanitized every hour, and there's appointments only for the Kalim mikveh every 15 minutes. So it seems pretty good, but you might have read that there are a few coolers out there, um, either for people who are quarantined and can't even do that, um, or people who are too nervous, or whatever the case, where you basically sell your items to someone who's not Jewish, kind of like your chametz, and then you're using their kalim, and you're actually allowed to use the kalim of a non-Jewish person without Tevilas kalim. So if people need that, that's a possibility. A couple of words about cleaning for Pesach. So I know a lot of people, um, every rabbi is giving a class this week on how to make cleaning for Pesach easier, more easily. So I think that that really could be a class every year because it's always difficult to make Pesach, and especially this is one set of difficult circumstances, but it's really always challenging because when you're going to work and everything till the day before Pesach. But just a couple of things about cleaning that I think you should remember. First of all, I wrote this on the chat today. There's no such thing as chametz air. So if you open something during the year, the chametz air doesn't go in it, that you have to kasher it. It's only the actual chametz that, that's a principle, that only chametz makes something chametz. So if you have something that's not chametz, that was opened, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not chametz, and you don't have to get rid of it. Certainly if it's paper cups or something like that, but really anything that's kosher Pesach that's open is still kosher Pesach, unless, you think you put bread into it or something. Also, there's no such thing as chametz dust. So, sometimes you look at the floor and you're like, that dot there on the floor, it's probably chametz stick. So, we're not really focused, and it might be chametz, it might be crumbs of something. So, I think that when you're cleaning for Pesach, you should think that you're not looking for chametz dust, you're not looking for chametz crumbs, because crumbs are not really an issue. It's only actual chametz. You're looking for a whole Cheerio or larger. So if it's a crumb, it's really batel, and the mitzvah to get rid of everything is only when it's an actual piece of chametz. So it's not an issue of dust. And lastly, you don't really need to, people always talk about how Pesach is not like spring cleaning. It's fine if you have time and you want to like move your refrigerator once a year to find out what's there. That's great, but it's not necessary because chametz that's not accessible, meaning it's behind the fridge, no one would be like looking there and eating it. So that kind of chametz, you don't have to worry about it. We have something called bitul, where you proclaim that this chametz is nothing to me, and then that's enough. The only reason why we also clean and get rid of the chametz is because we're thinking about chametz you might actually see and want to eat on Pesach. So things that are not accessible or things that are crumbs are not really the concern. And also mechiras chametz. Mechiras chametz is, everyone wants to know how the rabbis can make Pesach easier, so they came up with a really good one called mechiras chametz. which is really means you take all your chametz that you don't want to destroy and you contain it in a certain area and then you sell it. So really the goal of cleaning for Pesach is to find out where your chametz is, have the ability to contain it and put it in a certain place, and then you do the mechira. For this year, the mechira, I'm going to send a link. I'm still kind of working on it, but the mechira could be done online this year. We can fill out a form and it will be sold. People ask about special kulos, like extra leniencies for this year. I know that Kinyo was definitely the first one that was brought up to me. So I think when it comes, right now, there are no drastic kulos that seem appropriate aside from online siyum for Titus Bechoros and the online form for Mechiras Chametz. But I think that the thing that, when you think about special kulos, I would say that things that are, let's say, a machlokes, where there's a really strong position to say that it's lenient, but, well, there's someone who's strict, so why not try to be extra strict? So in those cases, I think we can follow what the actual halacha is and be lenient in that way. In that category, I would put things like toothpaste and mouthwash, which are things you put in your mouth, so you kind of feel weird if it's not kosher Pesach. But there's a big debate about that. A lot of poskim think that it's not really edible, and therefore you don't have to worry about it at all. So, like in the OU magazine, they say, well, there's a debate, so sort of choose your own path. I think in this case, I would definitely not be worried about making extra trips to try to find the toothpaste that we know is not kosher Pesach, that has no chametz in it, given the circumstances. But so far, I think that most of the halachos will be able to actually keep. I think that we're not going to have communal koshering. So I think a lot more people will be doing their own koshering. And I want to go over that now. Firstly, how we kosher kalim and also how we kosher our kitchen. And before I do that, I want to go over a few halakhic principles that I think would be really helpful, because a lot, there's like 2 or 3 concepts that I think a lot flows from. So I want to just start with that introduction. So something becomes chametz dik, not food, but like an object which was used for chametz, that we call it chametz dik, pot or pan or table or whatever. So things absorb chametz when they touch chametz, which is hot. So heat is a really critical thing. If something was used only cold, it cannot absorb chametz. One little trick about that is that if you use something that's only cold and then you put it in the sink and you run the hot water, so it can become chametz because it absorbs chametz through the hot water that's in the sink when it's with other kalim. So, but something which is like a cold water cooler, the cold water spout, first of all, never touch chametz. That's one reason why it's okay. And the second is that it's always cold. It's never used for hot. So it cannot absorb chametz. A high chair, hopefully you're not putting boiling hot food on a high chair, but I'll admit that I've done it. So, the high chair can only absorb chametz if actually hot chametz was put there. Maybe you put that chametz on there and then you told the child not to touch it right away, so then it could become chametz. But heat is a critical factor. Now, what happens? Chametz goes into something, into a high chair, or you have a chametz pot. You cook chametz in the pot. Now the pot is chametz. What's going to happen? The chametz absorbs into the pot, and then when you cook your Pesach food, the chametz will come out of the pot into the Pesach food, and it will absorb the chametz. That's the whole concern. The chametz is absorbed into the pot, then it goes back out of the pot into the Pesach food. In the same way that a fleishik pot absorbs meat from your fleishik cooking, if you cook milk in it, the meat from the pot will go back out and absorb into the pot. Okay, that's the concern. So there's one big saving grace, and that is that if you use a pot for chametz or for meat, let's just talk about meat for example. If you use a pot for meat and then you put milk in it, and then you come to me is one of the most common questions. The first thing I'm going to ask you is how long ago did you put the meat into the pot? Because if the meat was absorbed into the pot more than 24 hours ago, the assumption is that any meat that will come out now into the milk pot, milk food, is not going to contribute in a positive way. Even if meat was absorbed 2 days ago into the pot and now comes out of the pot into the milk, even if there's meat there, that meat will not contribute in a positive way. So then it's kosher. You're allowed to eat that milk. Even though it absorbs some of the meat, you're allowed to eat the milk because if it doesn't contribute positively, it's batel. It's batel. So this is how we kosher kalim. You take a chametz pot, you wait 24 hours. This is the key thing. You always have to wait 24 hours before you kosher it. Let's say you have a chametz fork. You put it into a pot of boiling hot water. The chametz in the fork goes out into the water. And then what happens? What happens is it's batel. Because if it wasn't used for 24 hours, the absorbed food in the fork, which comes out into the water, is batel. So every time you kosher something, what you're doing is you're making it batel. You're making it disappear by contributing in a non-positive way, and then it disappears. So waiting 24 hours is the key to koshering something. Now, the big trick is, this is a big thing that makes Pesach very hard, that one of the stringencies of chametz is that it's not batel. That's the main stringency of chametz, that it's never batel. So if you have 1 in 1 million of chametz, it makes it asur, it makes it prohibited. And even if it was more than 24 hours past when the chametz went into the pot, it will still make your kosher Pesach food chametz. So that's why you cannot kosher something on Pesach. Because you take, if you have a chametz fork and you want to kosher it on Pesach, you put the chametz fork into a pot of boiling hot water, and then the chametz comes out of the fork, then it goes back into the fork and into the pot and makes it all chametz. And even though more than 24 hours pass, it's the stringency of Pesach. So we can only, but before Pesach starts, we treat chametz like everything else that it's batel. So before Pesach, you can kosher for Pesach. Once Pesach starts, you cannot kosher anything because it will just go out and come back in again. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is that if you burn your chametz, it makes it kosher with Pesach. So and that you can do even on Pesach. So if you have a self-cleaning oven and you run the oven, it will burn all the chametz into nothing, and then you can kosher it even on Pesach. So what I'd like to do now is move into my kitchen and just talk about a few ways to kosher.
Okay, let's just go into the kitchen. Hi. Okay. So, turn the sound off the other one. Okay, here's my kitchen. How do we turn this camera around? I'll figure that out in a few minutes. Just show me the sound on the computer. Okay, so, okay, here's my oven. The oven is the easiest. The oven, we put on self-clean and run it through, and it's kosher. Let's talk about the sink. Okay, so the sink absorbs food by because hot water brings the chametz into the pot, into the sink. The way to kosher it is to do the same thing, which is to pour the hot water over the sink. Now, the thing with the sink, which is tricky, is that what you really want to do, first of all, I recommend getting a new one once a year. If not, you can kosher that also. But you don't just splash some hot water in and call it kosher, because what you really want to do is directly pour the hot water on all the areas of the sink. So you kind of want to go across a few times and the sides to get the water to hit directly from your pot into all areas of the sink. What I recommend is boil up a few pots of water and go over it a few times to make it kosher. Again, you want to wait 24 hours. My stove will be full of pots when I'm koshering something. You want to wait 24 hours. You can't use the sink for any chametz for 24 hours, then pour the water over. Now, if you have a counter that you want to kosher, which is really convenient and clean to not have to cover it with contact paper, which is okay also, you have to do the same thing to the counter, pouring hot water over the counter, which could be very messy. My family really likes to kosher our counter, so I got a steamer. I got the biggest one I can find so that it would work the best. And the steamer, this is what I got. I have no idea. The steamer makes things much more convenient. I know how to use it, and then I remember for 11 months, and then I forget for next Pesach. But basically, you put some water in there, and then you turn it on, and steam comes out. Now, the thing with a steamer is that it's not really enough to just go around like that and steam it. Because what you really need is to have hot water, boiling hot water, hit every point of your counter. So the larger your head at the front, the better. There's like different attachments on this one. But what I would recommend is taking some really hot water and just pour a little bit on. And then if you take the steamer over the water, and you move slowly across the counter, you'll actually be able to see that there's hot water, which is the hot water from the pot, and then the steam heats it even more. You'll have hot water hitting every point on the counter. Okay, let's talk about the stovetop. The stovetop is, so what you really need to do is cover the bottom part of your stove with tinfoil, which I'm not doing right now. And then when you kosher the grates, what you want to do is turn the fire on high enough that it will make the grate super hot. Well, one thing you could do is you could put your grates into your self-cleaning oven, and that will kosher them. If you want to, this is a blech, so you turn on one fire at a time, otherwise it will get way too hot, and you let the fire burn for about a half an hour, and then you can move on to your next burner. That's how I do it. I'm a little bit scared about the self-cleaning oven, so I use the fire and I cover the bottom part with tin foil or something. I put a lot of this. This is a printout of our I have FAQs on the website with most common questions and koshering each thing. If you're koshering silverware, so you basically boil up a pot of water, make sure the pot wasn't used for 24 hours and the silverware wasn't used for 24 hours. And some people fill it up and boil it with water, dump it out, and then do a second run. But it's not critical if you haven't used them for 24 hours. And then you can drop your silverware in to the boiling hot water. Now, if you drop it a lot, it might stop boiling for a second. So you want to just, there you go, it stopped boiling. So you want to just keep the fire on, wait for it to come back to a boil, and then start dropping your silverware in. And it's really, yeah, stopped. And make sure it comes to a boil. It's very important after you kosher your silverware to run it over with cold water. That's a mitzvah, but doesn't make it not kosher if you don't do that. But you might want to, if you have a very big pot with this boiling hot water, you might want to wait for it to cool down first, turn off the fire, and then run the cold water over it. A lot of times we're used to just bringing it over to Eli Ehrenfeld's house, but it's actually pretty easy to kosher in your own kitchen, and maybe even easier to just dump everything in rather than having to bring it all over. I wanted to say that about the refrigerator, some people have a custom to cover the shelves of the refrigerator, but again, since the refrigerator is only used for cold, I don't think it's critical to cover the shelves as long as they're cleaned out very well. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, I'll pause for a second. Shira wants to share a few things about tips for Pesach and shopping for Pesach, but I guess, all right, let's start that now. Shira, on?
Yeah, I just have to change the background.
They love the backgrounds.
Need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I don't really have like a major method. I'll tell you what I usually do. What I used to do is I used to plan all my recipes first and then make a big master list, like based on that. And then I would go to either ShopRite or Cedar Market, some years to Evergreen, and then do it based on that. In the past bunch of years, I've actually like kind of moved away from that because I found that we ended up eating just much more like the usual things that we were always eating, like a lot of salads and vegetables and chickens that I could just, and meat that I could do the same thing that we always did. So that's what I've been doing the past bunch of years. I went to ShopRite today. I have to be honest, I didn't even make a list. Kind of just walked up the Pesach aisle and saw things that seemed necessary and bought them. I didn't have enough space, but I'll go back and get like the vegetables and the fruit and all the dairy and the, meat, that kind of thing later. But I kind of work off like, so now I go backwards. Like I use what I have and then, kind of look in and say, okay, what do I got? What are we going to make? I guess especially this year where there's like no guests, so I'm not necessarily catering to other people's like preferences. So I'm planning to keep it simple. Just use the things that we always have. Somebody did share with me a list of a Pesach list of like all the kind of like things that you need and attached to recipes. So I'm happy to maybe I'll put it on the WhatsApp group so that if people want to kind of work off of that, like just have a list to start with, that could also be helpful. But actually I find shopping for Pesach a little easier because everything is in one aisle. So we just kind of walk up that aisle and I mean, that's if you're at ShopRite, that's where I went. But Right. Tamar said I should say that it's totally fine to go to Cedar Market as well. Okay, so that's, just basics, but anyone who, a lot of people here who are experts at making Pesach, including my mother. So feel free to chime in with like your tips, how to make it easy.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions?
Rabbi, it's Robert Friedman. If you're koshering your stovetop with that blech method that you showed, why is it necessary still to line the bottom part? Will that not get hot enough so that will be kosher?
That's right. It
just-
doesn't get, the bottom doesn't get hot, so it doesn't get koshered, and then you might have like chametz spilled on it, and then I don't know. I see that. Yeah, I think basically it's because it can't get hot enough.
Won't get hot enough. And if I can, just one other question on glass. I think I asked you separately, but on glasses. So cold, if I just have water glasses, which never have anything other than cold water or cold drinks, are those usable? I think you kind of suggested not, but why would that be?
If it was only used for cold water, then it's not chametz. The only thing is if you wash it in the sink and you throw it in the sink with other things, like people kosher bechers, kiddush cup bechers, which could be koshered in the same way you drop it into a pot of hot water. It's not really chametz because if you only use it for wine, unless you put schnapps in there, and then But again, like you have to be careful to wash it separately.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can kosher the high chair by pouring on boiling hot water if you want, but it might be easier just to cover it.
Going back to the stovetop for a second. So instead of putting the silver foil, can you actually use boiling hot water and kosher it and not have to put silver foil on the stove?
I know that the poskim don't allow it. I'm not 100% sure why not, but I guess it's because they're afraid that there are areas that were hotter. Like it's in this in-between stage where it might have been like dry heat right under the fire, and then, but I'm not really sure why you can't just boil hot water and pour it over. Yeah, but the only thing that I cover is the stove, the bottom of the stove.
Just the top, right under where the flame is.
Under the flame, the whole bottom area.
That whole, okay, fine. I know my wife is usually very nervous because if you actually like cover the back part of it that has like the settings on it and stuff, so that's underneath has air that flows through it. If you cover that becomes very dangerous.
Yeah, you have to cover. You shouldn't cover the vent.
Yeah, the vent, right? That vent area. Yeah. What was your other question?
If an oven is not self-cleaning, then what you do is, okay, so if an oven is not self-cleaning, what you do is you wait 24 hours, you clean it with a cleaner, wait 24 hours, and then turn it to the highest for like an hour, and then you kosher it that way. That's like the in-between koshering method where you can't get it up to 850 degrees like a self-cleaning oven, but 550 is equivalent to putting into a pot of boiling water. So that's how you kosher a non-self-clean oven. Yes, Jerry, if you put the grates into the self-cleaning oven, that koshers, the whole thing is burnt out. I see, but a hot plate, you don't need to buy a new hot plate. You can cover your hot plate, just cover it really well, and that's fine. The only thing is that if the hot plate is glass and you cover it, it might crack the glass. Any other questions out there?
So every year, I have a quick question. Every year, I have my wife go around like to all the bathrooms and the kitchen sink and take those soap pumps, which this year, the antibacterial soap pumps and stuff, and I have her remove it and buy new ones and put brand new ones out for Pesach. Is that a necessary thing, or is that just my mishigas?
It's your Michigan. Yeah, that's how I grew up also, because everything in the house was new for Pesach. New toothpaste, new soap, new shampoo, everything was new. But first of all, the new one is the same as the old one. You didn't put food into it
I hope not.
because your chametz hands touched it before you koshered your hands. So that's what I always think is the funniest thing about Pesach. We kosher everything in the house, but our hands are chametz.
True. That's very true.
But we use the same hands. Thank God we have to put our hands in boiling hot water to kosher them.
Yeah. Well, this year might be a little bit more difficult to find those hand pumps, with brand new soaps.
Yeah. I think that, we talk about things to be lenient about. Soaps are not edible. They're not, I won't worry about soaps. Soap, shampoo, all that stuff. Even toothpaste, I won't worry about. I mean, you could put it, someone asked about a mesh bag in the pot when you're koshering. You could do that. But what I would do is just drop them all into the pot, and then when you're done, let it cool off, pour it all off into the sink.
Okay, I have a question, Rabbi. My
Yeah.
mother lives in a assisted living. She has a hot water urn that is only used for hot water and nothing else. Can she use that over Pesach? Do we have to get her something else?
It's fine. She can use it.
She can use it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If she, some people suggest, I don't want to make things difficult for her, so I think it's fine. If it was only used for water, you don't really need to kosher it.
Okay. It's hopeful that she'll be with us for Pesach, but I'm not too, I don't believe that's going to happen at this point.
It might not be the best idea.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to make it. So, thank you.
It's very hard. A warming drawer, the problem with a warming drawer is that the warming drawer doesn't get hot enough. It doesn't get to be even 550 like a non-self-cleaning oven. It gets to be like in the low 200s, I think. So that doesn't kosher it. The only way you can kosher a warming drawer is to put some other heat source into the warming drawer, like a blowtorch, to burn it. But I don't really recommend that. I saw some people suggesting that you can put like a few sternos in, and that will raise the temperature to 550. I'm not sure. If it does raise it to 550, then it would kosher it just like a regular oven. I read this year that there's a minhag to cover tables. I'm not really sure. I think you could kosher a table by pouring hot water over it. Actually, you could just clean it. Some people line the shelves of their fridge, but I don't really think it's necessary. Like I mentioned earlier. But the covering for a kitchen table, you can just get like a vinyl tablecloth. It doesn't need to be like a special Pesach cover. It could just be a vinyl tablecloth. Anything that doesn't have liquid will absorb through it. Also, tablecloths you can use. A lot of the things I'm saying right now are in that Google Doc Pesach Prep review, which I tried to really just write down all the questions that people always ask. And I'm updating it as people ask them, so that I think it'll be a good resource. I'm just gonna put it into the chat again. Yeah, I was gonna cloth tablecloth. You can run it through on hot in your washing machine, then they can use it for Pesach.
Rabbi Shaiwitz, for the stovetop grates, how long should you have the flame going to kosher it if you're gonna light
If
the
it
flame?
turns red hot, then it's enough. Mine don't necessarily turn red hot, so I just do like 25 minutes to half an hour on each one. So it does take, if you have 5 burners, it'll take you like 2.5 hours. Definitely don't do 2 at once, because you could do, if they're not close to each other, you can, but if they're close to each other under the same blech, the heat will be really hot. I actually melted the knob because it was under the blech and the heat was so intense from the but you don't really need to do anything. You just run the fire on it, and it becomes kosher by itself.
Thank you.
You have to wait. Actually, you have to wait 24 hours. Anything that you're koshering except for self-cleaning oven. Anything that you kosher, you have to wait 24 hours. But even with the oven, I think it's better to wait 24 hours before you kosher it. 24 hours means 24 hours of hot chametz use. So you could use it for cold chametz, and you could use it for.
Could you do your sink then? Can you keep your sink cold?
Yes, yes.
And then
You could use the sink for chametz cold.
okay.
I don't know what I'm gonna kosher. I mean, Shabbos is a good time because there's nothing hot going on the. You know, you don't use anything. You don't use your oven or stove or sink for hot over Shabbos. But I don't know. Sandra, the blech is there to get the grate hotter. You don't really need to use a blech. You can use a big pot if you prefer. But the heat on the grate is much hotter when something is over it, like a pot, than when it's just open flame. So if you don't have a blech and it's just an open flame, it's not as hot as it was when you were using it with your cooking and the pot's over it.
Okay, even though what if that blech is chametz deck?
It doesn't matter because it'll be. It doesn't matter. You can use a chametz pot also for the same thing.
And just fill it with water or something?
You fill it with water so it doesn't burn.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
I would use a large pot filled with water.
Okay.
Can you talk about microwaves?
Yeah. They say you can kosher. I never kosher a microwave. But you basically boil water inside the microwave. The only thing is you have to replace the glass tray because we don't kosher glass for Pesach. And you have to cover the glass window with like a cardboard or something.
While you're koshering it, or keep it covered the whole?
Keep it covered when you use it.
That's interesting. I never heard that one, but okay.
I just read that. It's in the OU magazine. I don't know. I never liked koshering in the microwave because I find whatever. Yeah, that's what they say to do. So we'll go with that. You gotta trust the OU. You know, you'll see that. You know, maybe making Pesach isn't as hard as you thought. Golan said to me that this year a lot of people will be here for Pesach. I was like, yeah, but not in the shul. So,
So you still may never see some of us on Pesach.
What did you say?
You'll never see us on Pesach.
Okay. Yes, let's cover the shelves of the fridge. Just a couple of food issues.
Can I?
Milk and eggs. You can buy regular milk and eggs before Pesach without a hechsher. Also, raw chicken or raw meat. If it's in your freezer, you're allowed to use it on Pesach also. Even if it says they kosher Pesach. I do think that Cedar Market says kosher Pesach whole year, but I'm not sure. Okay. So if you have any other questions, let's use the WhatsApp chat and just again if people want it. Okay, thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
much.